Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Welcome to The Decision by EO Nashville. We are a podcast that interviews growth-minded entrepreneurs where we talk about the tough decisions that we make in business and in life. With me today is my partner in crime and co-host, Mr. Robert Hartline. Robert, say hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, you're still on for now. And my good friend, Chris Blair, with The Listening Room, fellow entrepreneur, fellow EO member, and as I mentioned, friend. Glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, we're both excited to hear your story. Of course, I know a lot of it. I'm going to try to shut up a lot. Chris and I have talked a lot about our trials and tribulations. So he's got some good stories for sure.
Chris, first time I got to spend some time with you was in South Africa.
Man, that was so fun.
It was wicked fun. And as a little shout out to those of you that could be interested in doing some fun trips with EO, EO Global is next level on an experience that I was never prepared for. And got my first experience was in DC for Global there. But going to South Africa was a whole new experience.
Yeah. Singapore next year.
I save up.
I keep saying I'm not going to get back on the board for a while, but this, those exotic trips are pretty awesome. And I've been to Athens, Bangkok, Frankfurt. I know I'm leaving. Bangkok I mentioned. It's a fantastic time. And it gives you an opportunity while you're there to go travel and do other things.
Yeah. So Chris, the former Have a Nice Day Cafe, do you know how many numbers I passed out in that place back in the late 90s? That was my jam.
Yeah. Yeah, the big punch bowls and
yes,
yellow smiley faces and
yes. So how did you come about that being your spot?
Well, that was actually the third spot. So, there's so many people that think of that as, kind of where we started, because that's really where we grew. But we got to go back. Like the Listening Room started in 2006 in Franklin. So I was on the corner of 5 Points, right across from Starbucks. That's CC's Yogurt right now. That is where we started in 2006. 2008 moved it to Cummins Station. What was it? Johnny Jackson's or it was also taken over like an old bar. Yeah.
That was also another place that handed out a lot of numbers too.
Yeah. So we were there, 2008 to around 2011. And that's when we moved to 2nd Avenue. And I looked, it was one of those things like Cummins Station was a great transition. I knew that I loved Franklin, still do, but I wanted to be close to Music Row. I wanted to be downtown. So that was the spot that I found, and it was kind of already built out in a way. Like the bar was there, and we didn't really have to do a lot to make it work. But what we've quickly realized is that it wasn't set up for what we were doing, for a true listening room, because we had the stage right up at the front, right next to the bar. So everyone's kind of piled around the bar talking, and you're trying to have a quiet, intimate setting. And you ask people politely to kind of keep the conversation to a minimum. And they're like, man, this songwriter up there is like one of my best friends. Like, screw him. Like, we're, like blah, blah, blah. It was all in fun. Right. But it became apparent that we needed to move. So we looked for a while, and then we found that place on 2nd Avenue, and it was like, everybody thought I was crazy because there was nothing there, but I saw the growth of Nashville. It was, speaking of a decision, it was one of those tough decisions of like, hey, do I move into this spot that so many other businesses had been in for 6 months to a year, and then they fail? I don't remember the number, but it was like 7 or 8 bars that had been in that location. And when I said, hey, this is where we're going, everyone was like, that is the worst part of downtown. Like, you're crazy. And I felt like this is going to be a hot spot.
What did you know that they did not know?
Man, I don't know if I didn't know anything. It was just that gut, I mean, it was just like what we do as entrepreneurs, you gotta follow your gut and hope that you're right. And it was just, when I looked at the growth of Nashville and kind of like, I saw what was happening before it was happening. And, I just felt like this is a natural growth area to go into. Like, you're not going to skip these certain parts of town, right? To go, okay, well, let's build out 15 blocks over here away from Broadway before we develop all of this. It just didn't make sense. So we were, we're right off Demumbrian, walking distance to Broadway. And it was just this little like couple block area that was like all old industrial kind of stuff that hadn't been developed. So rent was good. And it was, like, I didn't know. It was just that gut, like, hey, this is where it's going.
Was there an event, let's say a time where you were, after you signed the lease, you're in the space, you're operating. Was there a time that you said, whoa, this was a mistake, or did it work from the get-go?
Yeah, no, not at all. It was great from day one. I mean, it was just I had looked at I had lost count how many places that I had looked at. And I walked in, and I mean, I've got pictures. I'll have to send you the pictures so you can see. But when we walked in, I had a couple people with me that were friends that had done some things before and built out and stuff like that. We walked in, and they immediately were like, "Oh my gosh, no, this is a dump." And we had been to, I think Jersey Mike's or something. And I had my sandwich in a bag, and I like literally pulled out a napkin and said, "Who's got a pen?" And I drew out on the napkin, we're going to knock down this wall. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is where the stage is going to, like, the vision came to me the first time I walked into that place. And that napkin was what was handed to the architect and what we built out.
Wow.
And I mean, it was from day one. I mean, that's, like I said, that's kind of where the reputation started to grow for the listening room. And I loved that spot.
Now, was there a moment in time when you absolutely had confidence this was the perfect decision? Like, was there an event that happened with a show that happened, or something that was like, yes, that was a good decision?
Yeah. I mean, going back to Cummins Station, like, we were never successful there. Like, we were successful in the way that, like, we paid our rent and, like, did the things that we needed to do. But, like, there was a long time. And I think I've shared this story with you, but there was a time where I didn't think that we would be able to continue in Cummins Station. And it was, we almost lost the business.
How so?
Well, it was just, I mean, it goes back to, original partner I had, that was never a partner, treated, our booking agent at the time. She was fantastic, and, treated her poorly, you just didn't show up, decided on opening night. It was more important to, like, this guy was in his 40s and, like, decided to go ride his motorcycle instead of being an opening night. It was just there was a lot of bad things from the beginning that caused a struggle, and I basically had to do everything I could to get him out, and I did, and I sold everything I had. I racked up credit cards, and I couldn't afford staff. I was the dishwasher, the cook, the bartender, the sound man, the booking agent. Like,
how come you believed in it so much to make that such a risk if Cummins Station wasn't doing well?
Because at the time I didn't know anything beyond Cummins Station. At the time, this was my passion and my vision and what I felt like could be a great brand in Nashville and beyond. So, you know, it was tough. It was, you know, like I ultimately lost my house, but I believed in it so much that it was like, I was faced with, do I pay my mortgage and go back and get a 9-to-5, or do I follow who I feel like I was born to be, which is an entrepreneur and a leader. And I knew I would never be happy working for someone else. I'd done that for a long time. And it was a very hard decision, but it was the only decision.
So after you lose the house and I guess you're still under a lease, you're still operating, but barely. What kept you going?
Man, there was an event that happened that I've talked about a few different times over the years, but I had a couple very close friends come to me, Bridget Tatum and Brian White, great songwriters. They came and they asked if they could get a date to put a show together. I thought it was just a regular show. So, you know, I was like, yeah, here, how's this date? Blah, blah, blah. And then later on, I found out like there was not a lot of people that knew I was struggling. You know, I was doing like, I would, if you came in and you sat at the bar and you ordered a drink and a burger, I would pour your drink and then I would run back to the kitchen and flip the burger. I was doing everything, but I did it with a smile on my face. I was like, inside, I was dying. I slept on the concrete floor in Cummins Station against my lease. But it was easier for me to spend the night there on the concrete floor for a few hours than to drive home and come back. It was just it was terrible times. But again, I did it with a smile on my face, and there was only a couple people that through very intimate, deep conversations figured out that, hey, there's something going on. So they got this date. They put together what became known as the first annual and also was the last annual, but it was they called it the first annual TLR Appreciation Days. And they put this whole show together for me as an appreciation of like, hey, we love what you're doing for songwriters and for our music community. And we see your struggles, and we're going to have all of these people come donate their time. And I mean, it was stacked with like hit like award-winning songwriters, artists. Like, I mean, it was a beautiful day. So this day is scheduled, and that Saturday ends up being a couple weeks after the Nashville flood. And man, I needed that money. But I felt like I can't do this selfishly when this is going on. So I partnered up with Hands on Nashville, and Lisa Purcell, dear friend, was running Hands on Nashville at the time. She's at CMA now, but partnered up with her and said, hey, we're going to give a quote unquote portion of the proceeds to Hands on Nashville. And I didn't know what that was going to be yet, but it was like selfishly, it wasn't going to be much because I needed it. I was on stage singing a song that I wrote called Why Don't You Fall? And it was basically like, when you're walking through the struggles, like give it to God, like, you know, like that kind of thing, which is, you know, just where I am in my beliefs. But like I was singing this song, listening to my own lyric going, what am I doing? Like, I can't do this. And I stopped in the middle of the song and I broke down, and most people there didn't even know why they were there. They were just there for a good show. And I became very vulnerable on stage, and I was like, look, I can't do this. Lisa was standing over in the front of the bar, and I looked over her and I said, people have lost their homes. They've lost everything they had. And I can't take a dime. I need this. And I don't know that we'll survive another 2 or 3 months without it. But 100% of what we do today goes to Hands on Nashville, and we're going to help our city. That's it, man. Like nothing else changed. That was a Saturday. I still showed up the next Monday and did all of the jobs and still didn't have any money for advertising. Like nothing changed. People just started showing up.
Isn't it crazy how it's when you're in scarcity mode and you just go, you know what? I'm gonna conjure up abundance
Yeah.
that your world changes. Your mind changes and the world changes as you wish it to be.
Yeah.
And also, it's a little component of letting go.
Yeah.
Like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
This is who I am. And letting people know that you're struggling. Because, at the end of the day, part of what EO does, at least for me, is when I see someone open up and be vulnerable, I can see myself in them. I can see how I am, and it just realigns me like, hey, I'm not alone with this. And I really learn more about myself when you open up, when you put your heart out there and let everyone judge it, whatever, who cares? Like, at the end of the day, who cares, right? Yeah. And it probably showed more of your soul so the business could be soul, right? So it could be something for the community. I could see how that would make someone feel kinship to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, when you think about Music City, right? The experience on Broadway is not necessarily Nashville. The hooting and hollering is fun. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, music. You write music. Like, the music, it came from somewhere, and it wasn't necessarily written on Broadway.
Yeah. I mean, it's there was a time where that was the case. Especially back when, people would play the Ryman and walk through the alley. And I mean, everybody that played on Broadway was, that was the case. But yeah, now it's become more of it's just tourist, and you don't hear I've got a lot of friends that play Broadway, and there's some great artists and songwriters and people who kind of cut their teeth on Broadway and get their bands tight, and or they're just a player, right? Not just, but like, they're a guitar player or whatever, and they're cutting their teeth, they're building their chops on Broadway. That still exists. And then they graduate into becoming the next it, right? Or being the guitar player for Morgan Wallen or whatever. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is what Broadway has become is more of this, it's a great place to go just forget everything and party and all of that, more so than, hey, let's go listen to great music. Because that's not what happens there anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So you have been in EO for 2 years.
Yeah, a little over, yeah.
But you didn't have EO during the process of, starting your business. And if you're like most businesses, you go for a whole decade before you ever figure out how to make money. I mean, at least I did, you know? How would have your experience, knowing what you know about EO, been different had you been with EO since the beginning?
Man, I don't know that the decision would be different because, even the bad decisions that I've made, which there's been plenty, I don't ever look at those like there's no bad decisions. There's learning experiences, right? Like, that's the way I look at it, at least. So I don't know that anything like that would have changed, but I do know that I would have gotten to it a hell of a lot quicker. Like the EO experience for me, I mean, I think it's probably different for everybody based around your forum. And I have an incredible forum, Magic 32, baby. I mean, it's like, we're all very close. We speak on pretty much a daily basis. And I mean, we're running things by each other all the time. So yeah, if I had, like, I didn't have anything like that. Like, I couldn't, like, I was always close with my family and all that. I'm the first entrepreneur and everybody in my family. So, having conversations with, my mom and dad about stuff like that. I mean, it's just different, and friends that I came from, I was a financial advisor before this, and did marketing and, done tons of different things. But, it's like, you can't have those conversations with you can't have those entrepreneurial conversations with someone that's not an entrepreneurial most of the time where they understand, because we're dealing with things that's like, that's just crazy. Like, we're crazy to do this, but that's why
Is
is
entrepreneurship the riskiest thing you've ever done?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day today, when you look at your forum experience now, can you think of the decision you were struggling with that you brought to forum for help?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of those. I mean, that's another great thing that's about forum, because a lot of it is around business, but there's also the personal things too, right? That we go through. So, I mean, there's been personal things that I've brought to forum, and one of the things that I've brought recently, that I'm still working through is, at what point, does your business get to a point where it makes more sense to bring things in-house than continue to have them out? And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of things that along the way that we've outsourced because financially it made more sense, right? Like accounting, bookkeeping, IT, our marketing and PR firm, all of those things. And when you break it down to what we pay for what we get, it's a good deal. But at what point does that make more sense? Instead of having this person 1 day a week, I need them 3 to 5 days a week. And could I do that same thing and have someone in-house and, get a lot more success out of that for kind of the same price?
Right.
So those are, those kind of things. And the great thing about my forum is we've got people from starting out new in entrepreneurship to people who have sold businesses already for millions and millions of dollars, to people who are running businesses that are millions and millions of dollars, and just a wide variety of like steps in that process. So it doesn't mean that they have to know about the music industry. It doesn't mean that they have to know about the restaurant industry, like any of the things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. But those are the things that are great, is that at the end of the day, we're all dealing with the same stuff. And, that's what I love about it.
Now, do you have a particular style when it comes to decision-making? Is there something that, because one thing that we have seen, Eric and I, over the years in EO, is the reoccurrence of an entrepreneur who has a decision they know they need to make. They do a deep dive in front of their forum. They get a lot of good experience share, and they don't do anything.
You know where that was going.
I knew exactly where that was going.
And the next year, you're sitting in front of your forum, and you hear it's like, did you do the same exercise last year?
Did you talk to my forum before we got here?
So what's your decision that you can't make?
Yeah, man.
Oh, did I hit a hot button? Because
you did. Yeah. And I'm not sure how much I should say, because I don't know when this is going to air, and I don't know if the decision will be made. But yeah, my decision process was your question. My biggest weakness as an entrepreneur is hurting people's feelings.
Oh, wow.
I love people. I am a true visionary. If you look at like the EOS type of system, I'm a true visionary. I am not good at holding people accountable and being an integrator because I don't like conflict. I don't like upsetting people. I want them to do their job, right? But like, historically, I've been more of the hands-off type of leader that will still hold people accountable to a certain extent. But when things start to go to the point where I'm like, this isn't working, I will shut down and I will process that to the point where it's like, it's very obvious to the other person that like, this isn't working. And it's not good. That's not the right way to handle things, but I'm just really bad at it. So yeah, the thing that's going on right now is that I have a person that I really, really like.
It's tough to like someone that you need more from.
Yeah. And I'm not yet to the point where I don't know that it won't work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's still, but it came up. The reason I was laughing was like, did you talk to my forum? We had forum last week and I wasn't scheduled to present on anything, but we had time and I did a lightning round presentation based on this. And it was like, here's the situation that's going on. Here's how long this person has worked for me. Here's what the expectations are. Those have all been lined out. Here's what's training, blah, 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 like everything. And this is still not happening. Like I'm still doing a big part of this job.
It's not solved for you.
Right. And it should be like, it should have been months ago.
I'm curious, what would it have been like to be if this person was in your forum? Would you said the same things that you said to your forum?
No.
So with you,
Probably not.
Yeah. Isn't it hard to be truthful to people, like to their face? Like I find that so hard for some reason.
Yeah, I tend to be better at it now than I was 10 years ago. I think that's just age and experience, but it is hard to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it has become easier in those tough conversations. Like every situation like this that I've ever dealt with, where like in this situation where it ultimately leads to letting somebody go, right? There's not been one time that I've ever done that's been easy. And there's not been one time that I've ever done that 18 hours later, I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I wait this long?
That's always the case. Yeah.
And yeah, I've experienced this. And I think I talked about it in a different episode where we never come back to forum a month later after letting somebody go, man, I really missed that person.
Yeah.
It's usually once they're gone, you discover 5 other things that were not happening that you needed and we're not getting.
I heard someone the other day mention, instead of letting someone go, they let them grow.
Yeah.
Because you grow when you get let go. Like you are forced to take into account your responsibilities, how you contributed to the growing process. They have, they force you to have to do something tough. Man, I had a person that worked for my company that had I done that when I could have let him grow a lot earlier, and he would be way further on than him sticking with me.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
I had this conversation. So I did this presentation earlier this week, and one of the guys on our forum who is one of our scribes and writes these things down and kind of keeps the notes. After I talked, he literally was like, that you talked about this same exact thing 3 months ago. And I was like, wow. So anyway, going back, like I left and I called a meeting with this person, and I went and I sat in their office face to face, and I had exactly that conversation. And I said, listen, here's my struggles. I don't know that this is going to work. I don't know that it's not, but we've got a long way to go, and we've got to do that in a very quick way. And I was like, I like you a lot. You're a great person. And, I've got to put that aside and look at this as business, and you're holding me back because I'm not able to focus on what I need to focus on because I'm also doing your job, but also, man, I'm holding you back. And that's what I said is like, I know you love it here and I know you want to stay here, but if this is ultimately not going to work, let's not have this same conversation 6 months down the road where I could be further along in my business, but you could also be further along in whatever you do next.
That's a great way to put it.
Because he's like, it's a puzzle piece. That's the way I look at it. Like, he is really good at what he does. The problem is when you go through, and this is why I love the EOS system and why, like, this many years in business, it was like going through that system has made me go, wow, like now I see it, you know? And he's really good at what he does, but those puzzle pieces have to fit. If I'm if 1 out of 5, if I'm a 5 on something and really good at it, he's also a 5, that doesn't work. You know, like, I'm a little visionary and integrator, and so is he. And that could be that rocket fuel. That could be a great team, but that's what I'm starting to kind of figure out. And it's like, look, man, like, you could do this same job for somebody else and be really great at it because what you're good at, they're bad at, and vice versa. And all of a sudden the puzzle pieces come together. And maybe that's the case for us, but right now I'm not seeing that. And yeah, it's hard.
How far along on EOS are you?
About a year.
Okay. So you're really getting comfortable with the language and the flow and all those things.
Yep.
Who do you have somebody as an integrator right now? Is he the integrator?
He's the integrator.
Okay.
Yeah. His first day was my 90-minute intro to EOS.
So
that actually, it was part of his interview. I was pretty sure I was going to do it, but I was like, hey, I want you, as your final interview, you're going to come sit through this 90-minute session, and you are going to make a decision whether we should do this or not. That was his final interview.
Wow.
So
never heard that before, but that's a great way to do it.
I mean, I was the one making the decision, but that's what I told him. Yeah. So
Yeah.
We're gonna learn a lot.
Yeah.
So do you have a trigger for you for when enough is enough?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I do. It's just, I think that varies. There's just so many different things that we do, right? So it's like, you know, there's been triggers of, like, you know, there might be somebody in a position and they're killing it and things are great, and they do one thing that's just so stupid, and could hurt the business, like something like that, where, like, that's the trigger and that's it.
Yeah.
And then there's also times like this, that's the more often situation where I usually let it drag on way too long. And what I'm learning, to your point, Eric, of, like, it gets easier as, you know, as we grow as entrepreneurs. What I used to do 10 years ago is just wait until they were so unhappy that they quit.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the easy decision. The easy is just letting things happen as they are.
Yeah. And then it's like, along the way, again, it's still not easy, but it gets easier. And, you know, and there's been people that I have worked with in the past that were really good people. And I wish I still had them in my life, you know, like, not working for me, but I wish we were still connected. But because those things kind of drew out the way they did, there's not a lot of people, maybe not any, that we left on, like, bad terms necessarily, but it's like, man, thank you so much. And that's it, you know, and, like, you know, you just don't talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the world is too small. Life is too short. You know, and especially Nashville, there's just the community. It's like, I don't want that. Like, I want to build a legacy that when people hear Chris Blair, like, I'm a connector, I'm a person who gives back, and people love working for me, or if they don't anymore, they loved working for me.
The experience made them better.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I hope that's the case. And there have been people that have left that were shocked and didn't talk to me for a while. And then we get connected at some event or whatever. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, they'll say something like that. Like, thank you so much for what you taught me. You know, and that means a lot, but, yeah, it's just, I think it's important to figure out that process and, not let it get to a point where it's somewhere it doesn't have to be.
Right, right. So let me ask you this. So one last question. So new members of EO, if you were in a room with them, what advice would you give them to get more out of an experience with EO?
Again, I go back to Forum. I think that Forum is so important, and Eric, you and I have talked about this. You've been in the same Forum for how many years now? 15 years. Yeah. And they're your best friends, and it's like, and that's the way that I view mine. It's, I'm a little under 3 years in, but we're all very close. I think Forum is just a huge part of it. But outside of that, those are the 5%, right? Those are the deep conversations where you can really dive in. But all of the events that, like, going back to what you talked about in global, one of the biggest takeaways that I got out of South Africa was how incredible Nashville is. Like, I didn't understand that. I didn't realize how lucky we are. And talking to other people that were from different parts of the world, and it's like, oh, you're that chapter. Like, I didn't understand that. And like, I know that, like, everybody, entrepreneurs, hopefully all over the place, whether they're in EO or not, are listening to this podcast. But I think, like, that, what I kind of took out of that is I break it down and I look at, like, how many events that we do through EO Exchange and regional events. And that was the only global event that I've been to so far. But the learning experience of whether you're sitting on a Zoom call or you're going to a dinner or whatever, like, there's just so much knowledge that I have taken out of this that you can't really put a price tag on that. It's just,
yeah. I got to experience, when you travel, reach out to the chapter before you go, because there's a whole group of friends welcoming you to a new city that you don't know about, that can show you an experience in that city that you could never have access to just being a strange tourist. And you don't have to be a stranger.
Yeah.
There's just so much, because we all share in the same struggles. We are having a new, different experience everywhere we go. And it's common language that we can work with when we're traveling. So I felt the same way in global with that event. Just hearing people go, "You're from Nashville?" It's like, yeah. They're like, "That is so cool." It's like, yeah, it is. It is. I guess it is.
We've talked about that, like, on retreats, reaching out. And I actually got a call yesterday from a guy that is in EO out of Columbus, Ohio. And he had left me a message a couple days ago, and I called him back, and he said that, like, they're planning this to bring the chapter to Nashville. And he was like, your name in the listening room keeps coming up, that we've got to go to the listening room. And that was a great honor, and I loved that. But the thing that hit me is I called him back, and I was like, "Hey man, like, this is Chris Blair from Nashville listening room." And he's like, "Oh my gosh, like, you're the first person that's called me back. Like, thank you." And, I don't know how many people he reached out to, but it's like, I also think, like, we get so busy in our day to day that, when those calls come in, like, take the time, because I'm not going to do, like, I'm not doing anything special. Like, I just called him back.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring this group of 30 people or so and enjoy a great night at the listening room. And I hooked him up with a bunch of other places that he could go, and other EO members that have businesses that I was like, "Hey, you should, like, this place would be cool," and all of that. But, I know now that, I don't know what I would be doing in Columbus, Ohio necessarily, but, like, I have one friend.
Yes.
And soon I'll have 30 that when I go to town, like, I could call. And it's like, that's just another great part of this organization, is that it's just, you've got connections to people all over the place.
Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Man, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for listening to EO Nashville, The Decision podcast for entrepreneurs right here in Nashville, Tennessee. If you are a prospective entrepreneur and you are interested, you can visit eonashville.com to learn more about how we band together as friends in the entrepreneurial community right here in Nashville. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic week.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.